Hello and welcome, folks. This is Chris, the Bardic DM, alongside with Seekers of Legends, Rambling Bards, Episode 2, Xcrawl Campaigns. I'm here with my co-host Josh, and we'll be exploring various campaign potential for the Xcrawl setting. Go ahead.
That's just his nice way of calling me a lackey.
No, if you were a lackey, I'd have to pay you.
That explains a lot, then.
Hey, if I don't get paid for the job, then you definitely don't.
Fair enough.
If we start making in money from the actual games and stuff, then yeah, I'll make sure to send a bit to everybody.
Don't worry, man. I trust you.
Although I will need to be making, if I intend to turn it into a career, I will need to be making more than minimum wage myself before I can start paying anyone else.
It's always a long process, man.
Yeah. Right, so maximum Xcrawl, potential campaigns.
Alright. Since you've been so involved, we should probably start with your Power Ranger idea.
Yeah. It's a fairly simple idea, folks, as bonkers as it sounds. The idea is that obviously dungeon crawlers in this setting are effectively celebrities. So why not have them do a kids show? And then work on actual mechanics for the fights and all that, where you mimic something like the Power Rangers, because well, most people are going to be able to get a laugh out of it.
That would be... Go ahead.
The Megazord fights might be a bit difficult. Although there is a D20 book on mechs, and it does have a subsection for combiners.
One more thing to look up after this session.
The D20 mech something or other. I'll get you the exact name. It was originally published for 3.5, obviously, because what wasn't?
The D20 System Mecha Handbook?
I think that might be it, yeah.
I just found it was the first thing on Google.
Yeah, I think that might be it. If not, I'll double check my files later and let you know. I'm sure I've got it downloaded somewhere.
If I was in that campaign, I'd have to play off like pissed off, heavy drinker type of guy who's pissed off that he can't curse or do anything in the kids show.
Well, that'd be your yeah. Now we just have to figure out what you'd be playing in the cast, because you'd have to have sort of like, you'd effectively be running two different characters, wouldn't you? Your on-screen, you'd have your on-screen persona and your off-screen persona. That could be fun, actually.
It would be pretty nice. I'd want to make it like he's forced to be like the happy-go-lucky nice guy.
Yeah. And of course, you've got the excuse that if you have anyone new join the campaign, you've got the pre-made Evil Ranger scenario.
True.
Well, admittedly, it's not the only scenario, but it's the easiest one to do, really, isn't it?
It is. Plus, every time we lose somebody from the actual campaign, we could just do that, or we just say, cast contract dispute, easy enough.
Well, casting dispute, and for the in-character thing, just do what they did with the Season 1 of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, send them off to a peace summit. Or do the whole passing the power routine, which, again, could be good. And again, you could do that if you were just getting bored of your initial character but wanted to keep the Ranger colour, do a whole passing of the powers scenario. It would be something. You'd have to get a decent soundtrack as well, though, for it.
Yeah, you're gonna have to see if Commissioner Ron Weiserman.
Although, if from what I recall, when Saban first got hold of Power Rangers again, the new season basically had a retune of the original Power Rangers theme, so you could just use a variant on that.
No, there are like a dozen of them at this point.
This is true.
We've done it a lot.
Well, it was a rather good theme, you've got to admit, just for the guitar aspects. You could go one step further. Oh, go ahead.
Or if I want to just piss people off, making something like using things from the rip-offs, like Beetleborgs.
Yeah, well, Beetleborgs wasn't bad as a show. At least from what I remember, I haven't seen it in years.
Same, I have very vague memories of it.
Well, I've got more than vague memories just because I did have the Shadowborg saga on video. I remember that much.
I think I've seen it like once at my grandparents' house, that's about it.
It was one of the regular morning kid shows here in the UK.
Yeah, but I knew at least that much at the very least. They were all Saturday morning cartoons.
Well, yeah, and then they weren't Saturdays here. It was VR. Beetleborg was actually on at sort of 8 o'clock in the morning during the week. Sort of a before school starts show.
Mm-hmm.
Not a bad way of getting kids, really, is it? Be what they watch before they go to school, and therefore what they talk about.
It could be worse.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I mean, there were other shows like that. I mean, you could do if you wanted to do something a bit more high tech, you could do a VR Troopers variant.
Well, I wouldn't do that. I would just. No.
The bad comedy from the 90s kids shows is getting to you, apparently.
All I know is just I breathe in, I sexually swallowed and spit.
Ooh. Or if you want to do something really silly, you could. I don't know if you've ever seen this one. It was a really, from what I understand, it's a bit of an obscure one. The Superhuman Samurai Cyber Squad.
I've heard of it.
It was interesting, amusing, and not the cheesiest thing I've ever seen, that's for sure. I think that still goes to the, and again for not so catchy name, what was it?
The tattoo teenagers from Beverly Hills.
That's the one.
Like that.
Yeah. Oh, Sky One, Saturday mornings. Oh, the cheese.
I think I've seen so many like retro show reviews and things like that. I think I've heard more than the last few years I ever saw them as a kid.
Oh no, I saw most of them, but that's just because, well, I've got a very good memory for pop trivia, so I tend to remember them quite well.
I think I've seen a couple, but I remember next to that thing.
Yeah.
I actually had this case. I actually hit my head as a kid.
Ooh, ouch.
Yeah, bicycle without a helmet.
Yeah, never learned to ride a bike, so never had that risk.
You are lucky then.
Well, when you've got lousy balance and thanks to the screwed up wiring in your head, you pedal backwards, bikes are not a good idea.
True.
Well, not unless you want to invest in large amounts of money for a trick bike, in which case, well, that was a bit more investiture than I was willing to do when I didn't know if I'd actually take up the hobby. But at least with Power Rangers, you've got a lot of options because you could draw from any one of the series, or even mishmash them together for your own concept.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the most obvious would be Mystic Force from sort of the mid 2000s. Well, if you're going to have a fantasy set one, you might as well use the one where the main characters are all wizards.
I'm picturing something like this. The Power Rangers costumes are just insanely stereotypical wizard robes.
No, but they did all have capes.
Oh, and I know that. I did actually see that season. I was just thinking for the campaign.
Yeah, but if we did that and we did it in Seek of the Legend, Anna would want the luggage.
maybe they're arguing for her to get it too.
Oh god, I'm imagining the luggage as a carrier Zord.
One day we'll eventually find the enemy's base. We just have the luggage come up and just open its mouth at the entrance.
Yeah. Oh.
We can get in and they can't get out.
Yep. Oh. That would be... It'd be hilarious, but I think the luggage might be a bit too horrific for a kids' TV show, even in the universe of Xcrawl.
We can find an excuse. That or we put it in a canyon.
Yeah.
Just drive them over the cliffs.
Yeah, that'd work. You do realise, of course, after a while the luggage would get bored and come after you.
We'll have some safeguard in place.
Yeah. But, so, I think there's not much you can really explore with that. I mean, obviously you would need a system for, as I've said, as I mentioned when we first discussed this, if you were going to have something, you'd have to have like a point or an energy sort of accumulation thing through rounds of combat for, being able to summon the Zords or whatever.
Yeah, gotta do that. Every 10 feet of movement is an automatic flip.
Well, some of the series are like that, but I don't think it would. Although you would have to you'd have to make acrobatics a class skill for everybody.
I'm trying to picture the druid and the fighter doing it.
Well, to be fair, there would be the advantage that the fighter would be wearing something that gives great armor class but has virtually no penalty.
True.
Magical spandex. Oh, because it is supposed to be fairly tough stuff, isn't it? You go off in-universe stuff. Probably be AC 5. So the wizard would be very happy.
It seems like most of my games end up going with everyone has light armor anyway.
Yeah, that's just because Pathfinder disincentivizes playing with heavy armor. Like, massively.
True. I mean, seriously, the penalty on tower shields is ungodly.
Yeah. And if you try and do the combination, yeah, you're a great wall. That's all you are. Oh.
Tower shield's just so big you can't even get your weapon around it.
Well, unless you do the phalanx fighter archetype.
True.
Which is a badass archetype.
I need to double check that thing. I've heard of it mentioned a few times, but I don't think I've ever remembered to actually look at it.
Basically means you can one-hand a pole arm and carry a tower shield at the same time, and that's the designed fighting style. Put that with heavy armor, and hello. Try and hit me, I dare you.
That would be brutal.
Yeah, particularly if you go into sort of the, one of the RPG bot range defender builds that's all about, attacks of opportunity with your pole arm.
Oh, that would be nasty. But there's actually a feat that I know of called something like Brush Fighter.
Yeah, but that requires you to be a follower of Shelling.
People would sacrifice a lot less for their builds.
This is true. Personally, I think it should just be a general feat rather than a religious one. I mean, as if a trained soldier doesn't know how to choke up on a pike.
True.
I mean, being able to do it as a free action is a different thing, and or I think it's either a swift or a free action. And either way, yeah, I can see that being a feat. Maybe have it as a.
Go ahead.
Maybe have it as a regular thing if you were, to do it as a move action or whatever. That's about all I could see, if I was going to change rules and all that. So, next on to the more classic Because you had an idea for the games themselves, didn't you?
Yeah, I was thinking perhaps something sort of like Survivor.
Mm.
I think it's sort of a original transitional arc for people to get used to the setting first.
Yeah.
Mainly just they'd be on an island, they probably have a rival from another they'd be competing against occasionally. That group would probably be NPCs controlled by the GM. They'd probably set up some percentile tables to figure out whether people die or people are replaced.
Yeah. Well, I will say probably wouldn't have people die because it's not normal unless you're into the very high end of Xcrawl for it to actually be a death scenario thing.
Yeah.
So it'd be more whether you got, voted off or whatever by the public. Oh, that'd be something you'd have to worry about. Cultivating your fame so you didn't get voted off. So you had to start with a new character. So it'd be somewhere between Survivor and I'm a Celebrity, get me out of here. Or don't get me out of here, as the case may be. Yeah.
Well, if we want to make it high next game, we could just make it sort of like get voted off. Don't get voted off. We're drawing you to the crocodiles.
Yeah, but I probably wouldn't do Xcrawl as a stream campaign, not at least at the moment. Partially because I just don't think it'd be some of the players' styles.
Yeah, definitely.
Not to mention, I'm working on some ideas. I mean, I'm still waiting for the Grognards to give me a bit of advice, because I sent in some a question asking about advice for the campaign. Because I've got a few ideas, but they're all kind of samey.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping for some outside inspiration that's not got completely different that's got a completely different perspective.
Well, hopefully I'll get to it this stream.
Yeah.
Coming stream.
Yeah, it's either going to be that or 3 Men in an Anime, which is their other stream, which is quite good.
I haven't seen that one yet.
Yeah, it's because they've had to shift to Tuesdays, and the third member of the team, Gav, who, if you followed if you watch any of their Star Wars stream, you'll know it. You'll know from there. But I don't know if you've gotten back and had a look at them.
Not yet.
Worth the watch, and Gav is a laugh riot, but they do anime reviews, and it's normally quite amusing. So I'm not sure. I mean, obviously you've got the fame mechanic that you'd have to work with in a classic game scenario, which again.
Yeah.
And as you say, you could do the whole competitive aspect where winning contests gets them extra points, or maybe gets members immunity, or maybe gets the team immunity from the voting process.
Definitely.
Maybe transition it from there once they get to sort of a certain part in the island. Do it a bit like the Serpent Skull Adventure Path, where they come to a ruined city, and then have it exploring that.
Yeah, that would be good. I would probably set it off like accident. If you see, might be air quoting right now. Accidental destruction of their camps that are forced to move to a new place as well.
Well, you could do it that way, or you could make it easier than that. You could have it that each weekly episode, aka the session, they're given a specific task that just happens to move them further into the island and closer to the city.
True.
After all, there's always got to be challenges on these game shows. Well, you'd hope anyway. Otherwise, that's just going to get boring.
True.
So, I'm not sure what else you could. Well, I suppose there'd also be the whole. You'd have to figure out how to do sponsorships and all that sort of thing.
Everyone before the first episode has to get a tattoo somewhere.
Ouch. No, but again, you could have it based off fame and have a similar sort of voting system. See, you could have actual drops within the various contests that will win them different items and all that. Well, that'd be another thing. The quests could have actual specific prizes for each person.
One of them's just a can of cola.
Well, Magical cola. Or the other way would be, again, another civilian vote thing, where depending on what which means they get different loot depending on what their fame score is at the end of that week's session.
That would be nice. Also sort of play up the rivalry among the team members as well.
Yeah, although you don't want too much of that.
Yeah, gotta find a way to avoid PvP somehow.
Have it be an automatic... Well, no, because it wouldn't be an automatic penalty to the fans, but have it be an automatic penalty to sponsorship, so decreased loot from mission drops.
Mm-hmm.
But a potential increase with certain types of fans. Then there'd be the question of, apart from animals and monsters, what other threats you could put in there.
Weather, insects.
Yeah, weather would be a difficult one. You could put in, rather than just, the normal professional monsters, you could put in sort of professional tribes of monsters, as it were, so you've got to try and negotiate those.
They'd get to a fight a little early. They see one of the orcs reciting Shakespeare, trying to prepare for a better role.
Yeah.
Before he has to drop it.
Yeah, well, that'd be during the commercial break, because otherwise somebody's in trouble. and there'd be the other issue, along with the dungeon judge, who would have to be sort of living probably in the city with a bunch of magical viewing things. You could have announcers playing wind-up merchant as they go.
Better, we just have one hired hand just having to rush through costumes every day through the adventure, picking up all the roles.
Yeah. It would be interesting if chaotic. Then there's the question of what you do for an end boss.
It's just a giant mascot of some corporation.
No, because that makes the corporation look evil, bad optics. Someone would be getting sued.
Something like you're mainly hired like Pepsi of this world, and it's Coca-Cola Beast.
Yeah. Again, probably getting sued. I could maybe see, though, well, again, you could go for some sort of, fake elder god or some such. And you could do an interim sort of build-up to that with sort of like, with actual, as you progress along towards it, sort of maybe like the last 10 episodes, last 10 sessions have every other one involve you going head-to-head, potentially in not quite PvP with one of the other teams.
That would work pretty well.
Sort of elimination rounds.
True, maybe if we're doing like the voting, maybe like something like both teams vote. Yeah. The lowest voted person voted to go, so they both face off against each other.
Yeah, I was more thinking just general actual team-on-team battles, potentially with, various environmental challenges. You could go back to what we said in the last episode and actually have parts of the ruins be like arenas from the Gladiators show. Or if you wanted to be real bastards, you could make it like Takeshi's Castle.
Oh, I love that show.
I'm not a fan, but if you're going to take inspiration for a dungeon that's meant to be a TV show, that's where you go.
That's true, but it's going to have to be related a lot more in the party's favor compared to the actual Takeshi's Castle.
Oh, yes, but then again, I think the fact that most of the people who go on Takeshi's Castle, if they were in game, would have a plus 0 to their dex, and 0 ranks in acrobatics probably wouldn't help.
True.
mean, if from what I've seen when you get it, if you get anyone that's actually got any type of gymnastic training or is actually in shape, they tend to do all right.
Yeah, but they always end up binding it at the end of the show.
Well, yes, of course. The course is designed to be unfair as possible.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I probably would dial it down. Still weirdest one I've seen from that. I'm not sure if it was actually Takeshi's or if it was some British. I think it might be a British equivalent to it that was somewhere. And one of the challenges on part of it is a wall of boxing gloves that just keep popping out. Yeah, one bloke got really unfortunate right in the crotch. Piston-backed boxing glove right between the legs.
I always remember this one challenge on Takeshi's. It was the giant boulder. They had to run up the dome hill.
Yeah.
Something with crash padding. They're constantly dropping down the giant boulders, but there's always just barely enough time to get through these little safe hidey holes.
Yeah, yeesh. That would be evil. Still not as evil as the piston-driven boxing glove, but that was just, bad positioning and...
True.
You'd think you'd have been a bit more careful about that one, wouldn't you?
Hopefully at least had a cup on.
Judging by the fact that he fell off, that he completely lost his grip and fell into the water, I don't think so. I mean, still not the worst I've seen happen to a bloke, because that still goes to the cricket ball between somebody's legs during secondary school.
People call the US crazy.
It was a missed shot and an odd bowl, but yeah. Yeah, the squeak was loud, we'll just say that much.
He was singing soprano the rest of his life.
Quite possibly. Ooh, I don't think there was a bloke that wasn't wincing at that point. But the amusements of the UK and the amusements of the suffering of residents of the UK aside.
No, it never ends, man. Gotta keep going for now.
It might end, although it might be in a very messy revolution. Funnily enough, I think at this point they'd actually welcome having the Crown back in charge properly. But that aside.
Right, now, actual politics aside.
Yes. So, we've got that. What was one of our other ideas? Ah, of course, college dungeon crawling.
Alright, that one. How
Wait.
to get through that to try and get scholarships.
Well, the first session would be you trying to get it. The rest of the campaign would be you competing in college level dungeon crawls to keep it. You could do the full course. Oh dear God, can you imagine getting that for a medical degree? 7 years of dungeon crawling.
Oh, that would be horrible. Oh, I could just imagine some of those sort of hyper obsessed with studying students just being completely brutal.
Yeah, you just have to hope they hadn't decided to be the party wizard before they started. Then again, I suppose if you've got magic as an actual profession, you've probably got people who are actually studying to be mages doing the dungeon magic career.
I could just picture something like the wizard, they take a wizard spell or something, like a wall spell every other level just to block people from keeping people behind them.
Yeah. Oh, that could be. And then, of course, you've got the environmental studies druid. Of course, you would have the other issue oh dear God, the party. Oh dear God, the bard's got a hangover and we've got to crawl in 5 minutes.
Just strap him to the barbarian and drag him behind until he wakes up.
Yeah. There was actually a book I was reading recently that basically is not quite that, but is very similar themes.
What is it?
I think it's called Dave the Barbarian. No, that's the TV show. Hang on, Dan the Barbarian. That's it. You can see why I got confused.
Yeah, get that. I actually knew Dave the Barbarian.
Yeah, it's a lit RPG. It's all right, but if it's not, it might not be to your taste. It's a bit of an odd one, but it does have a very old stoner wizard and his orangutan animal and his drunk orangutan familiar. I think he might be an orangutan, might be a chimp. I might be getting it mixed up. Chimp. Orangutan's a librarian. That's why I'm getting confused.
Lemurs always hit me as the heaviest drinkers.
Yeah, but the scary thing is, you've got a chimp familiar who drinks, and more importantly, never let him have whiskey, because apparently he's allergic to whiskey. It makes his knuckles bleed.
Oh.
Drunken brawler chimp in the middle of a university. No, thank you.
Rachel just takes him as a cohort, gives him levels in Drunken Monk.
Oh, that would be a terrifying thing to see.
Just imagine how low the bite attack would go.
From a chimp? No, thank you.
Yeah.
Chimps are scary enough. I don't know if have you ever seen the picture of the chimp that's lost all its hair?
I believe so.
Yeesh. Nothing but sodding corded muscle.
I keep picturing before every. Sorry, I love this image too much, but I also keep picturing something like you give him some foam. You give him something like foam to drink before you draw him in at every fight, so that immediately everyone thinks he's rabid too.
Yeah, that would work. I'm not sure if you could replicate the wizard, though. I'm not sure if there's actually a wizard who gets bonuses from being under various chemical stimuli.
I'm checking right now.
To the best of my knowledge, there isn't. There's probably a third-party one or something like that called the High Wizard, because of course it is. And if there isn't, I'm homebrewing it.
As you should. I'd have to see that thing played at some point.
Yeah, mandatory chimp familiar. But yeah, it was a good book, and as I say, you could have the college dungeon crawl thing could be quite good, because you could have sort of, depending on how you do it, you'd either have to do the college crawls as either a point based or a speed run system.
Mm-hmm.
Probably point based, because people having to rush through the adventure isn't fun.
Agreed. Also, I can also see the downtime plan become extremely important.
Oh yeah, it'd have to be. I mean, you could technically do it as long as a real, college, university course, so you could actually have a full, 4-year campaign. Yeah, and you'd have to decide which country you're doing it in, because the university is so different between the UK and the US. Probably do it in whichever country the DM's from, because I am not learning the American scholastic system just to run a campaign.
No one should have to.
Not to mention, at least with the English one, you pick your course when you start and you stick with it. Although having the bard be although having a bard in an American university version of it where they just have to where they're just constantly switching mages, which is why they've got bardic knowledge, would be quite amusing.
Suddenly everyone starts valuing the bard for once in a campaign.
Oh yeah, everyone would, even if you didn't necessarily like whoever was playing the bard, it would be sort of, yes, we have to keep him around because he's really useful when it comes to studying. Now, what did you learn last time? Oh. And then, of course, you'd have to adapt the college courses as well, because there would be magical courses, so you'd have all those on. And theology courses would be very different. We are learning about the gods. Do not insult them, they can hear you. That'd be another thing if you've got that. Because you do have, if I remember correctly, there are religious colleges in the US, aren't there?
Probably.
So you could have specific schools where dungeon run teams are completely made up of clerics and paladins and war priests.
Oh, there go the most broken teams.
Yeah, I was going to say, they've been winning for several years straight. Gee, I wonder why.
Or also something like perfectly bred half-orc SMRs.
That would... At that point, I'd be starting to worry that there was some sort of religious eugenics program going on.
Considering Xcrawl, there probably is.
Yes, but we're not doing the base Xcrawl setting, because if we are, we're dealing with Roman gods, and I'm not dealing with the Roman gods. I can't be that petty as a dungeon master.
And there's the first ever GM who said that.
No, I'm fairly sure most GMs would get tired of trying to mimic Zeus.
Oh, I get that, but it's just, being petty.
Any DM worth his salt should not be petty.
True, but sometimes they really earn it.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, players can earn a little bit of payback, but that's not being petty, that's giving them what they've earned. Particularly if it's by in-game actions, which it so often is with that sort of thing. I'm going to say, there's an example in another book series I read, NPCs by Drew Hayes, where you've got some of the most asshole-ish players I have ever seen in anything. And they get comeuppance in a big way.
Oh, I can't wait to see that. I've still got that book on my to-buy list.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, there's another series technically called Caverns and Creatures, and I could not get into it. Sorry for the deviation, folks, but this is just a warning. Because the GM likes to, the author likes to make fun of stereotypes. So the entirety of the protagonists are all a group of the most asshole-ish players possible at the start. And it's trying to improve them by throwing them into danger. I just couldn't get past the first chapter. It was all people being the worst sort of people that you would never want to game with. Sort of, if I wouldn't want to game with them, why would I want to read about them? Doesn't help that the author likes to be very blunt about his political opinions, and yeah, he puts it into his writing as much as he puts it into his blog posts.
Oh, yay.
Yeah. And the funny thing is, I mostly line up with his political spectrum. Wouldn't stop me from putting my steel toe caps between his legs if I met him. If for nothing else, then he's just obnoxious with it. It's like, okay, these people disagree with you. That does not mean they are the worst people in the world. That aside, I'm just thinking, I suppose there would be one other advantage if you did it in the US rather than the UK. Xcrawl equivalent of fraternities and sororities. Oh god. You'd have to have one of them being an evil cabal. You'd have to.
You know, you gotta have like a group of the drow being the really pristine high-end ones.
A drow sorority. Dear gods. That would be terrifying. I wouldn't want to think what they... Then again, you'd have to adjust all the cultures as well, because you could not have normal drow living in an Xcrawl setting.
True.
Just no. So many police violations.
Oh, come on, he just had his navel exposed. He walked into my ceremonial knife.
That would be the one sorority that everyone is scared of, the all drow one. It's like, nope, not going in there.
They've also got all the drow girls, so you're able to convince the drunk dickheads to come and join them.
Yeah, funnily enough, none of them walk out again.
True.
Or if they do, it's on a lead.
Only the obscenely lucky ones.
Or unlucky. They get to experience it for longer. Because I can't imagine having a prolonged experience at the hands of the drow is better than a swift ending one. Well, depending on what they do with your soul.
True.
Actually, I can think of one that'd have even worse reputation than the drow sorority. Any sort of Greek culture that's focused around necromancy. Again, no!
I swear to God, I thought you were about to say goblins fraternity.
No, because, well, for one thing, goblins in and of themselves aren't going to be smart enough, most likely, to get into a university, and hobgoblins are all going to be in military school. And bugbears are just going to be the bouncers. You would not mess with that club. You've got an old bugbear bouncing team. Yeah, nope.
I was picturing something like there's some law passed that they gotta hire so many goblins. Some idiot goblin managed to get a lot through.
Yeah, well, depends on what type of goblins. If you do it with semi-decent goblins, it's alright. If it's Galarian goblins, no, just because, well, goblins wouldn't want to.
They just trap them all in the ditch underneath the gym.
Yeah, at which point the gym burns down because goblins always have something that lights on fire on them. But as I say, I probably wouldn't do that, but I would probably actually remove normal goblins and just have hobgoblins at that point if I was doing an Xcrawl setting. Just because...
What would you... Go ahead.
I'd probably just call the new hobgoblins goblins rather than, just because they'd be a bit more functional as a, they could exist better in a society, and I don't think in a world where they'd always existed and it had gotten to modern age, traditional goblins would make it through to the modern age.
I'm picturing something like that. It's that whole... I don't remember what it's called off the top of my head, but it's that whole ape transforming into a modern man picture.
Yeah.
At one point, it's just for the there's one for the hobgoblins. It's just at one point in the middle, it's just like a goblin strapped with dynamite strapped with self-charging.
Pretty much. Oh god, goblins in the world where there are explosives. I was going to say, there's another book series, sorry I keep referencing stuff, but I've seen so many urban fantasy with high fantasy races where, goblins, not hobgoblins, but just regular goblins were the most likely to be sort of the strung out meth head group.
So even more like traditional goblins.
Well, at least it'd be an excuse for it rather than it just being their culture.
They all used to have biotax before.
Yeah. Yeah, before the meth got to them really bad. Oh dear, I'm now imagining a hobgoblin Walter White. Well, that'd be another thing you could do in an Xcrawl setting. You could just do a game where your characters, rather than being dungeon crawlers, are members of the police. Sort of a special investigation squad.
I picture something like that would be like the GM's ultimate retribution, putting place for all the same sort of shit they used to get players used to put him through.
Oh, almost certainly. And then some, because he can get more creative. Oh.
Right, don't bring Corlin back for that.
Oh, I wouldn't. Might introduce you to a troll on PCP, though.
Imagine putting him on bath salts.
Yeesh. Dragon on an acid trip. That would be a worrying day. There's a dragon downtown and it's hallucinating. Or if we could use Wizards of the Coast material, Beholder on an acid trip. With their whole, our dreams and perception of reality can create new ones. Dear God, what would you create? Oh.
Could you imagine how much acid you actually need to get a dragon high?
More worrying. Imagine how potent the stuff has to be if it looks like a normal acid tablet.
So much as liquid oil, you're gonna immediately overdose if you're a human.
To be fair, you're probably going to overdose if you're a giant, let alone if you're a human. Oh. Scarier thought, if you're doing sort of the Cops of Xcrawl setting idea. Mafia boss that you find out at the very last moment is a dragon! We weren't prepared for this. No wonder he's the boss.
So it suddenly turns into a Shadowrun game.
Yeah, fair point. Well, Xcrawl and Shadowrun have got a fair bit in common, just less high tech for Xcrawl. I suppose you could take this and tweak it to a Shadowrun setting if you wanted to. Maybe take some elements of Starfinder and attach them on. They take a little bit of hammering, but you could do. I mean, I've not looked at Shadowrun in a while, but I was never sure about the system, so that might actually not be a bad way of doing it.
I've always meant to look into Shadowrun, but I never sit down long enough to actually learn the system.
Yeah, I need to do it at some point. I know there's a lot of versions, though, and I've heard bad things about the first couple.
They're real meat grinders.
Not so much that, just that they're very... that, as odd as it sounds for a pen and paper game, they're buggy as all hell. Lots of inconsistencies and clashing rules. Not quite as bad as first iteration White Wolf products, but getting there.
I remember I heard this once. It was actually something called Cthulhu Punk.
Oh yeah, I've seen that. No, wait, sorry, it wasn't Cthulhu Punk, it was Cthulhu Tech I've seen.
I don't know that one.
Great old ones are trying to conquer Earth, so we create giant robots to fight them. So
before or after Pacific Rim?
Before.
Well, I know someone has a lawsuit now.
It'd be kind of difficult. The company went out of business before Pacific Rim even got the first trailer.
Yeah, too bad.
And besides, I think if you're gonna, it's not like they're exclusive to the whole Eldritch Horrors fighting giant robots concept, is it? I'm fairly sure someone in Japan would have the first lawsuit for that one. Probably whoever came up with the Sentai concept, to be fair.
Yeah, I can picture something like the old ones coming in trying to drive the world madness, but they're already all mad and they're already actually armed well enough to actually put up a decent fight.
So if a great old one stepped into Warhammer 40k, basically.
Pretty much.
To which the great old one goes, actually no, there are things bigger and scarier than me. Nope. And why is the pink one looking at me funny? Great old one meets Slanesh. Great old one runs away crying. As would anybody, to be fair.
I mean, been seeing so much stuff, videos in my feed lately about trying to see stuff that will survive the 40k universe.
I've seen a lot of them as well. I'm not particularly interested, but yeah, they've been everywhere. Did you know they've started writing kids' books for Warhammer 40k and Age of Sigmar?
Why?
I don't know. I don't. It makes no sense. And the one for 40k, every one of the protagonists is some form of heretic. And they're fighting the Necrons. Well, actually, they're trying to resolve things peacefully with the Necrons because the leader of the group is a pacifist in 40k. And they're getting helped out by a Ultramarine.
I barely know Warhammer War, and even that makes my head hurt.
Oh, it gets even better. One of the people being helped out by the Ultramarine is an Imperial Guard deserter.
This is like some of the worst fanfic I've ever heard.
Yeah. Oh, it gets even better. The other one, the leader, the pacifist, is a child of a rogue trader and a great lover of Xenos culture. Yeah, then meeting an Ultramarine, the most orthodox of all Space Marines. That's gonna go real well.
They've got plot armor tougher than adamantine.
Well, the kids of the Ultramarines either could be true. Oh. But 40k and the attempting to make it child friendly by GW aside. Slaanesh, child friendly. Oh, that has so many bad implications. And whatever you do, don't Google that combination because something tells me you will then have the police knocking on your door.
I hear someone knocking right now.
Yeah, even talking about it has them worried about what we might be talking about. Not unreasonably. Slaanesh is disturbing shit. So, last one we had the idea of... Oh, we nearly forgot about one as well with the distraction of 40k. The idea of an actual threat in an Xcrawl game. You know, rather than just a competition. You have your character. So the basic concept for anyone for our one viewer, thank you for tuning in by the way, is the basic idea is that you have a group of celebrities as your adventurers. They are established crawlers, so this would probably be for a mid-level campaign, maybe about level 5 starting point. And they discover that one of their backers, or one of the big groups in the world, is actually a demon cult. So it's a case of where something Scientology, but worse. You know, Scientology, but it's, well, I would say actually a threat, but it's Scientology, so more of a threat.
Oh god, I was saying... Did I tell you about the choir boy in one of my campaigns?
Yes, the bard that was basically a Scientologist cleric without actually being a cleric.
Yep.
That still baffles me.
I couldn't get past one session with him.
Don't blame you. But, so yeah, you've obviously got the whole... They've obviously still got to do occasional crawls because, well, they've got jobs and all that. But they've also got to try and investigate and figure out what the hell is going on. And of course, you would have to have one of the sponsors or one of the co-stars in one of their shows being, you know, a member of the cult.
It's really hard to tell what's props from their show and what's actual evidence.
Yeah, that would be fun.
We're
Oh, just sort of one last one before we go, because we are getting up to we are getting up to finishing time. If you want to do a short introductory campaign, whilst you could do the whole introduction to college crawling and all that as one option, here's another one if you want to do a slightly higher level. Xcrawl at shooting a movie. You literally just play out the scenes that are supposed to be for the movie. If you want to add in the actual in-between scenes, then that's great. That lets you extend the campaign, lets people get the other side of it. But at the same time, if you want to, you can just play out, a Xcrawl version of your favourite movie.
I was picturing it being something like it's just one shitty movie with the fantasy Michael Bay running it.
Yeah, you could do that. If you wanted to do real fun, you could do you could do the Xcrawl version of Alien or Predator.
I think I'd kill for an actual Xenomorph campaign.
Well, Pathfinder and the Horror Adventures and some of the other books have introduced the hive monsters, which are basically a cross between Xenomorphs and Tyranids. Why do I get the feeling I know what you're looking up at the moment?
Because I kind of have to. They sort of reference aliens.
Big fan of the Aliens franchise, are you?
Oh, absolutely. They rank Alien and Aliens pretty much ranks one of my top 3 favorite films ever.
I've not seen them yet. I picked up the complete collection for $5 from a charity shop a while back.
You are dead to me until you actually watch them.
Yeah, it's finding the time, dude. I am planning to do it at some point. I'm gonna say that was one of the better deals I've ever had from a charity shop, though. Still mint condition, sealed collector's edition of all the movies, £5.
I'm gonna come to UK and rob you for that thing.
Once I've watched them, I'll be more than happy to post them to you. Actually, that's the point. Maybe I should just watch them on Sky Movies instead, and that way I can send you to it still new in the packaging.
You don't have to worry about that, man.
Yeah, it'd be fair enough. But as I say, that could be a fun one. Or, oh dear God, that'd be something. You could do a retwisted fantasy version of the Marvel Cinematic Universe if you wanted a really long ass campaign.
It's just one big argument about who's going to play Iron Man.
Oh, yeah, that would be... Well, you've got a simple answer for that. Who can pull off a decent Robert Downey Jr. impression and actually be funny with it?
And when none of them can do it, it's immediately just off the table.
Yeah. Or you could do the other option and do the DC Cinematic Universe and do it right. Zack Snyder should never have been put in charge of that universe.
They've just completely ruined that. They're doing some of the best comic book stories they've ever done. They can't just get the comic book people to really do anything.
Yeah.
Films.
Yeah, and now they've got booted Henry Cavill from the role of Superman.
Yeah, I don't really care about Cavill. I was more mad about the Batfleck being gone.
I've never watched Batman vs Superman, so I haven't seen any of Batfleck.
Ben Affleck as Batman is one of the few redeeming qualities of that movie.
Well, even though doesn't he at some point point a gun at somebody in front of their kid?
I don't remember. It's been a while since I've seen the movie.
Well, that was one of the biggest criticisms I saw of it, which is kind of the biggest damning criticism I've ever heard, really. Yep. And Carbon, yeah, you're right. Running the Marvel Cinematic Universe as a campaign would be too long.
That'll probably take as long as the entire start from Iron Man to Infinity War just for that alone.
Yeah, dear God, I wouldn't want to think about how many years we'd have to be playing.
We might get it done before the death of the universe.
Yeah, but better question, would we get it done before memory problems of old age set in and we forget what we're doing?
Maybe.
Well, anyway, it's coming up for the hour, so we're going to be signing off. Thanks for watching, Carbon. Hope you've had a laugh. Yeah, fair point. Time skip's are an option. Well, we're going to me saying see you and take care. By the way, both episodes will be up tomorrow on YouTube. Sorry I haven't uploaded them yet. Just wanted to have both of these out of the way before I tried uploading.
Yeah, no problem.
Alright. Well,
I know. We could skip over just the Thor movies, the first two Thor movies.
Yeah, I like that.